there. So they asked me to kind of do this presentation, and I thought, okay, I'll do it. It may or may not work for you, but I really should have titled it Confessions of an Instructor Who Got Mad. Because honestly, that's what drove it. That was what drove the whole thing. And I wasn't sure how many people were gonna come, so it was like, well, we'll see. Introduction, so go around so that people know what you're teaching, and then I'm gonna tell you why I got mad. Because that's what pushed me to do something, and then the approach, the rationale for why I wanted to do what I did, the things that I feel like I won. So even if something is not a passing grade, if it's improvement, in my mind, that was a win. So I've got some wins to show. And then if you wanna try it, let's figure out how it will fit into what it is that you wanna do. So I'll tell you what I'm doing now, and then feel free to ask questions along the way. That's fine. So what I wanted to know, because I didn't know who was gonna be here, what department, division that you're in, what courses are you teaching, and what's your success rate? Because if you're where my course is, you're gonna be on somebody's radar at some point. So this is what we know. So that's what I had on there. So will you start?
Angie Wood, Social and Behavioral Sciences. I teach college success and world geography and cultural geography. College success courses by nature have a really high passing rate, just because we're the cheerleaders and suffocators and intrusive educators in their lives in our division for that 7-week period. Geography, the success rate is lower. I don't know the actual percentage, I should, but it is lower. Because I'm not as good of a cheerleader. Or I haven't learned how to do the weekly to-do list. That's not.
Yeah, I'm Bobby Meyer. I teach A&P. You know what the success So.
Success isn't even the right word, I think.
Survival.
They come into that thinking it's going to be just like a high school course. With the same attitude, they've had no background. They come back to me later and saying, we were never told what was expected when we signed up for this. And even though I tell them the first day, they don't believe me. They do not believe me. They think I'm lying through my teeth. So, sorry. Had to
No,
vent.
That's okay. This is a safe space. This is a safe space.
Me?
I'm David Woolert. I'm in the biology department as well, and I teach mostly microbiology and general biology for majors. Microbiology I enjoy a lot because I get the people who completed AMP, so they've already met a bar. And then GB1 for majors, though, is a different volume. That's why I'm here, because I don't know what the exact number is. I should probably actually figure it out, but it didn't wear out these.
I'm kind of OCD, so I actually calculate mine every semester because I really can't help it.
When you say success rate, are you meaning?
So here's
number-
how I define it. The number of students C or better. That is how I define success. Even though I know, and like if they were transferring on, they could get a D in AMP1, and that would be considered a passing grade. I do not define that as passing because here they could not go on to AMP2.
But you mean the number divided by the total enrollment, or the number?
That made it to, well, I include the withdrawals in there.
Okay, so I mean, if you said you had 20, I don't know if 20 is high or low, kind of depends on how big the sample size is.
So like for AMP1, last fall, the success rate was 36%. 30%.
Of first day attendees.
of first day, they were there at census.
Census, okay.
So it doesn't count people who showed up once and you never
Figured it
saw
out
them again.
quickly.
But you are counting people who took the first test, bombed, and decided to drop.
Yes. So then the flip of that then is the DFW rate.
Okay.
So
Which should be 100 minus.
the
Yeah.
30s, yeah.
I'm Crystal Gordon, I'm an ENIT. I teach civil and construction classes, that's my concentration. In our later classes, the ones that they would take as a traditional sophomore, success rates are fairly high. By the time they've gotten there, they've decided they really do like it and they're sticking around. In my entry courses, the freshman level, in my one class, that I guess is the engineering equivalent of A&P, I have about 86% success rate. I do track that one because I try to implement new things to keep people in there. That's the one where you learn the terms and the processes, things like that. The boring, the language class, I call it, where we learn to speak the same language. That's the one where I tend to lose the most people.
Do you lose them really early or do you lose them by midway?
I have a surprising number of people who end up with an FA, and I don't know why they don't just drop it. When I tell them, you know, you're at risk of failing, you still have a week you can drop, and they just, you know, and even before that, I will reach out and say, hey, you know, I don't feel like you're doing what you need to do to maybe be successful here. And, you know, I've done as much as written out plans of success. This is how you can get caught up. And I still lose the people. I mean, but my classes are smaller, obviously, in A&P, but that would be difficult.
So like, what's a typical size? Cause I don't know.
About 24 students.
Okay, so that's a typical lab for us.
Okay.
And then our lectures for A&P are double that. So for
That's
every
right.
lecture, 2 labs, so we're putting about 48 in.
Yeah, that's a lot. That would be a lot to try to individualize like I'm doing.
Okay, so that helps. So here's how, this is the reason I got mad. So fall of 2018, 36%. But the question was, what percent of students passed? That's the percent of students who passed. So there were a lot of FAs to go with the Fs, a lot of DFWs, all, and this was across everybody who was teaching A&P 1. The numbers are a little bit better in A&P 2 because they haven't gotten out of A&P 1. And then the other thing that I will share with this is there is no cutoff in the number of times that you can repeat A&P 1. You can take, as long as your check is good, you can keep repeating this. So I didn't think about that when I started looking at numbers for repeaters. I didn't look at if that was their first attempt, second, third, fourth, fifth. And of the students that I was tracking, there was a student who had taken it 5 times before they actually passed it. So that's the other piece of it. We have a lot. They're doing the same things that they did the first time, so they get the same result that they got the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. I mean, we have at least, I know Bobby and I have had a student 8 times.
Wow.
Just out of curiosity, if they take it 5 times and pass one, and then they take A&P 2, do they tend to pass A&P 2?
On the- no.
3
No.
times?
It
They
usually
would-
takes
they
at least a
separate.
couple of attempts, and sometimes it's so bad, because for the program, they have to have it current, so within 5 years. It may have taken them that long to get out of A&P 1, equally number of times as A&P 2. By the time they pass A&P 2, A&P 1 is no longer good, and then they're back. But we let them, because there's nothing that says you can't.
So what do you think their motivation is? Do you think it's just an internal passion, like they must do that?
I
or do
wanna
you
be,
think it's
I
an
wanna be a
external-
nurse, you know, I wanna help people. My family really wants me to do this, I really want to do this. But part of it is, you're not changing what you were doing to prepare. the
Yeah.
first time around. You're doing the same thing that you did, and you're getting the same result. And it's hard to have that conversation, because I will sit and look at repeaters and I'm like, this is for you. I know that you're in this class again. You cannot do what you did in the spring, because I'm gonna see you again. And I'm frankly tired of seeing you, and I'm sure you're tired of seeing me. You know, I kinda make a joke, but I mean it. So you gotta do something different, because what you're doing isn't working. And you know it, cause you're back in here, again. And some of them, I know, I was the second time in the fall, so then if they didn't pass in the spring, that was the third time, they're back in it again, that's the fourth time.
I have one, this is our fifth time this semester.
So that's the thing we fight against. So then, if you go to convocations, they love to put up the top 20, based off in enrollment. And then they couple the top 20 enrollment with, here's their success rate. So the yellow bars are the enrollment rank. The yellow bars are how successful you were. So what this means for AMP is we are maybe 7 or 8 like fall of 2018, but we were the worst. So, and with the exception of 2 years where we were next to last, we are always last in terms of the success rate. But our enrollment is always pretty high. We're usually within the top 10, let alone the top 20. So they're always putting this out, they're always projecting this, they're always talking about this, and basically, okay, what are y'all doing wrong? This is how we feel, when they do that. So that's one thing you see. So for me as an instructor, it's like, okay, well, you guys are obviously bad instructors, because if you were better instructors, your students would pass. Or you need to pass more, so maybe you need to lower your standards. We're not lowering our standards, I'm just gonna tell you that. You know, why aren't you doing more innovative things? I don't hear this every time, but in the 13 years that I've been here, I have heard this. And so it's hard not to take it personal, because you literally feel like you got a target on your back. You know, constantly, you feel like you got a target on your back, when you teach it. So we then got into Achieving the Dream, and they were doing the success rates as well. And A&P is number 7, and then we were number 20 in terms of how successful we were. So this was the top 20 that they did, and then what they did was they just aggregated this by ethnicity. And so there was another one that they did, and this is the one, I don't know where I got this from, but I cut this piece out and I taped it to my wall. Every day I come in, this is what I look at. I look at full-time African-American 3-year graduation rates, compared to full-time white, full-time Hispanic, looking at those numbers. So that was my motivation.
I can tell you what that is.
Okay.
That's the iPads data that's generated after the 14th day at the end of the year. So this
Okay.
is what Tracy has reported to iPads.
So I don't remember what meeting I went to, but that resonated for me. And I don't know where the rest of it is. I literally cut this out. You go to my office, it's taped to my wall. It's the first thing I see when I walk in my office every day. That was the thing, I'm like, I want to do something about this. This is personal for me, and this is bothering me, and I wanna do something about it. So I look at this, I highlighted that, and that was my target. It's like, I want to do something to move this needle. So I looked at that, I look at it all the time. And at the same time this was going on, we started to become an Achieving the Dream. We were doing the focus on completion. I was on both of those task force. I was waiting and wanting to see it trickle down in my course so that I could move the needles that I saw on the previous page. If you know me, you know I have no patience. I got tired of waiting. That was, I waited a couple years, and I still couldn't see it trickling down in my course. I still couldn't see the needle moving, and I was just getting frustrated and impatient. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do something. Then we started talking about on this campus equity. That's when I was faculty senate president. And then out of that, I kept hearing, well, if we, we got to lower the standards to get them up to it. And that was pissing me off. Literally, I should have titled this Confessions of Somebody Who Got Mad. But that was ticking me off because the implication was they're not capable of doing the work. You cannot set high standards, here, lower the bar. No, you keep the bar where it is, you get them up to where it needs to be. So I got mad because even on that team, that was the assumption that was coming out. And I at that point, I was up to here, and I'm like, I'm ticked, I'm mad. So I was beyond frustrated, so I cleaned it up. Frustrated, that's the word I'm gonna use. So I was frustrated, and I'm like, I'm going to try something different. So the other thing is, I'm tenured and fully promoted. That is very freeing in going rogue and doing something. I don't ask for permission. I'm like, I'm just gonna try something. All I can do is fail. So I've been thinking about this. So if you know me too, there will be things in my head, and they stay in my head till I can get them out of my head. Well, this has been in my head for a while, so I started thinking about my own experience. I would have been classified by our campus's definitions as underprepared. I went through to a school where it was trying to get people out literate. So the things we were supposed to learn about breaking down sentences and the math, it was basic so that you could go to the store and figure out, do you have enough money to buy groceries? So I knew that there was stuff that I wasn't getting. But that didn't mean that I wasn't able to do it, I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't have some of the foundations that I should have had by the time I graduated 8th grade and went on to high school. My K through 8, we didn't even have a library at the school that I went to. They ended up having to convert the gym to a library because it's like, you don't have a library, and there was not one within walking distance of our house. So where do but I'm a reader, so any money I had, they would have that program where you could buy books through the school at a reduced, so that's where all my money went. But everybody didn't have that opportunity. So I started thinking about that for myself and thinking that I would have been in that same boat, in that same situation. And there were times where I saw that it impacted. So when I wrote my thesis, my major professor said, write me an outline. I didn't want to tell him I didn't know how to write one. So I just wrote the thesis because I knew how to tell the story, but I didn't know how to write an outline. And I didn't want to admit, I've gone through high school and undergrad, and I never learned how to write an outline. Every time they said write one, I just wrote the thing and said, here. Because I didn't want to admit that I didn't know. And I didn't want to ask for help for that because I knew I was supposed to know it, but I didn't. So I thought, I'm gonna think about that. And so my hypothesis is, I know I can't reach everybody, but there are people that I can reach who have the skill but don't know how. And if they get overwhelmed, then it's like, okay, I can't do that. So I'll tell you, for anatomy and physiology, one of the first labs, they've got the anatomical position, and they've got to label this all scientifically. And it's like, 40 or 50 words they have to learn? And so they look at that, and it's like, I can't learn that. And then I'm always like, yes, you can. And here's the thing, we're gonna take 2 minutes. So I'll be like, I'm gonna time it 2 minutes, we're gonna look at it in a chunk, we're just gonna take the neck up, front and back. So we're gonna do it scientifically, we're gonna do the common names, I'm gonna walk around the room, I'm gonna keep quizzing you on it, and then close your book. And then we're gonna go through it. And then I'm like, okay, you did that in 2 minutes. 2 more minutes, arm, front and back, torso, front and back, leg, front and back. In 20 minutes, you have learned these. And then periodically throughout the lab, I'll stop and I'll be like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then I'll be like, okay, what did I forget to ask you? And I'm like, you took something like this and you made it manageable because you made it in a chunk. A chunk you can do. I'm like, if you got 5 minutes, we can teach you something in anatomy. We can. 5 minutes, we can teach you something. So that was the premise. And the to-do list, I didn't want to give you everything that you need to do in a semester. Because again, for me, I'm thinking about them, okay, that's overwhelming, I can't do that. Okay, but it's like, here's what you gotta get for me, do this week. And this is what successful students are gonna be doing. I want you to do it. So my thing is, students don't do optional, so it's not optional. That was the first thing. Half page or less, because if it's longer than that, now it's overwhelming. So if I need it to be longer than that, I shrink the font. I do. I'm not lying, I do. I shrink the font. If it goes over that, I shrink the font so that it stays half a page or less, a week at a time. I hold you accountable. I give you deadlines. I want it by this. I want it by this. I want it by this. Do this before your lab. I give you deadlines, and then the thing that I do then is everything that I assign them, I go through and do. I make sure that the way they need to get to it, step by step, I give you no reason to say, well, here's how you get to it. Click, 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 see this. You get no excuses. It's very little of their overall. And I don't let you complain about it. Nobody can complain to me about this, what I'm making you do, until after your first test. No complaints. After your first test, you can come and complain all you like, but not until the first test. I literally will not let them complain about it. See your first test, then come talk to me. So that was the parameters that I set up when I did it. And then this was the first thing, this was the one I did in the spring. This was the actual to-do list. So for us, every student has a 2-week free trial access to our learning platform. All they gotta do is sign up for it. So they have to the end of that first week to sign up for it. And then what I did was after 48 hours, I'd go, hey, 78% of you have signed up. Okay, this is a reminder for the other 22%, what's your problem? Get it done. In a nice way. In a nice way, that's what I said. And then, this was Tuesday, Thursday classes, so they had to read chapter 1 by Thursday, because first day is here we're doing stuff. The first day we do content is Thursday. I want the chapter read. Again, if you don't read it, then you're already behind. Then, because of where they could have had lab before they had me, because we start labs at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, so my lecture was at 11. So they could have had lab before they came to me, but if they hadn't, then they had to read that portion before they went to lab, because that was gonna help them for lab. There were assignments to start here, so everything had a deadline. So do this, do this, do this. I remind them that they're attempts. And then because I had some odd times, and at the end of the semester, my biggest thing is I hate when somebody goes, when is our final? What did I tell you? Because I'm not gonna, I tell them on the front end though, I am not gonna answer that question. Don't email me, don't text me, I am not gonna answer when is your final, because I told you to put it somewhere where you know when it is. Because I'm not gonna answer that question again. You got the final exam schedule. I literally give them a sheet with all of my lectures. If it's an odd time, when it is, highlight it, put it in your phone, and don't ask me, because I'm not gonna answer that question. But I tell you on the front end, I'm not gonna answer it, because I'm gonna send you back to the sheet that I told you to highlight it on and keep. So that's what I did. And then they had to do prep. So it's a completion score for lecture, but to count as part of my work ethic, they have to get a passing grade on it. I won't accept anything lower than 70. It still counts as that, but it won't count as my work ethic because I want a passing grade. I'm literally like, the whole time. So this was 9 students that I knew were repeating. So I buzzed through my roster at the start of the semester. Okay, had them. Because I'm thinking, okay, what do I need to change test-wise? Because I know how far they got. So these were students that I had that I knew were repeating. And the green is the score that they earned on the first test in the fall, and the yellow is the score that they earned on the first test in the spring. It's a comparable test, it's not an identical test, but it's a comparable test in terms of level of difficulty and the learning objectives that are covered. And so the first student, was in the 40s on the first test, but below 70. But that's still a win, because now they're close to a passing grade. They're not a 70, I think she ended up with a 67, But I can work with that. If you're down in the 40s, you pretty much mathematically eliminated yourself, because our tests get harder. This is like the easiest test you're gonna have in A&P. The rest of them progressively get harder. So I was tracking them and I was like, wow. And these were just the ones that I knew. And there could have been other students repeating who had taken other instructors other than me. These were students I knew I had from the fall and decided to not try somebody else, but to keep with me in the spring. So I thought, okay, well, is this a fluke? What about exams 2, 3, and 4 in the final? Well, I didn't show all of that, but they all they kept improving. And so this student number 1 actually then was improving for each subsequent test. But that confidence made them want to keep doing that. So then I was ready to entertain complaints, and nobody complained. It got to the point where I couldn't keep up, because they would be wanting it Friday, and I wasn't writing it till Saturday, because that was when I had time. So then as soon as I would get it out, I would push it out on eLearn to them and say, all right, I'm gonna bring a hard copy for you, but those of you who wanna get started, here it is. I've had people then over the summer, are you gonna still do it? Yeah, I'm still gonna do it. Okay, I'm gonna sign up for you, because it just keeps them on task. It holds you accountable, and I make you do it, and I don't wanna hear any excuse. Do it. And then because they saw an improvement. That was their motivation then, I need to keep doing this. And it's not overwhelming, here's this chunk, keep doing this chunk. So then, this was their final percents, same students in the same order, this is their final percents. Student number 9 actually withdrew in the fall. So I didn't have a final percent because they withdrew before the drop date. And then student number 10 was not my student, but was repeating. She failed it the first time and got an A this time. But 9 withdrew, but the others are in the same order. So and the same thing, if you looked at their lab percentages, it was the same improvement. Because I would target stuff randomly for lab. If there was anything on our platform that was helpful, I assigned it, whether it was lecture for lab. But I would say, hey, this is for lab, do this. This is for lecture, do this. And I would just go after both things.
When you say that this was not optional,
It's part of their exam. So I make it like 2 questions, so usually there's 4 you turn in before an exam. So each of these is like half a question on the exam. So if I give a 50 question in-class exam, their percent earned is out of 52, because they have to turn these back in completed.
or the turning in?
They're turning in that to-do list that they've done everything that's on it. So this was the first one. Now what I do is I have initial and check boxes. Yes, I have completed this. I decided this like less than a week before classes
So it's
started.
kind of honor system.
It is somewhat of an honor system. Now, if they say that they did the Connect assignment and it got at least a 70, I can go in and check. But some of it is an honor system. And so I'm treating them like adults, I'm taking them at their word, but if you say you're on Connect and you're not, I will know. So those kind of things, I do know. And if it doesn't, so if they had a bad score, what I didn't have a chance to follow up on is if somebody said they did it and then bombed it, then I wanna know, tell me exactly what you did. Did you really do this? Or did you just say that you did this? Or if they didn't turn them all in, it's a very small percentage. The gain was in the improvement in the scores. And that was the motivation for most of the students to keep doing it.
Because the Connect already is not optional.
Correct. But there are other things on there that are beneficial. And I always would say, here, check out Connect. And nobody would check out Connect. So then I checked out Connect and I'm like, you need to do the practice atlas. You need to do the practice quizzes. You need to do. So I would literally say, their assignment now is they have to take 5 50-question practice quizzes to put themselves in test mode, 1 a day over at least 5 days. They can't do it all at once. And it's just 50 questions that cover the chapters that are gonna be on their first test. And so I can't see whether they've done that, but usually I can tell by scores if they've done it. And then I will flat out ask, did you really do it? Or did you just say that you did it? And then I'm like, look me in the eye and tell me, did you really do it? And because there, a lot of times they'll be honest about it, because then after the test, I made them reflect. So I said, is your grade, what's your grade? Is it higher than you thought, about what you thought, lower than you thought? If your score is lower than you thought, one thing you are going to do differently. And that, and don't tell me, just read more because I don't know what that means. Or I'm gonna study more. I will send it back and go, I don't know what that means. I don't. I need concrete. I'm gonna study, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go to the tutors. I need something concrete, and if you don't give me something concrete, I send it back and say, I don't know what that means. I'm gonna study more. I literally don't know what that means. So I make them give me something concrete. So people, that's when they're, but then they'll say like, okay, it was me, I did everything you told me not to do. You said don't cram the night before, I crammed the night before. I didn't really do everything. They'll be honest on that sheet because I'm the only one reading it. And so there were people that were honest and said, I did everything you told me not to do. So I got the grade I deserved. So they're taking ownership of the fact that they failed. Okay, so now what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? And I was also then emailing them saying, you need to come talk to me. At the same time, I'm putting in an early alert that says basically, make the student come talk to me. Some of, maybe a third of the students, I actually got in my office and then it's like, tell me exactly what you did. Well, I read the book, so then me. Well, how do you know what you don't know? Well, I read the book. How do you know what you don't know? If I give you, these are the learning objectives. If I give you that objective, teach it to me. No books, no notes, no Google. Can you do that? No, well then you don't know it. So somewhat tough love. But it's like, if I get you in my office, then I'm gonna be like, okay, here's what you have to do. You know what the objectives are. Every test question ties to an objective. Every single one we ask you, everything I ask you in lecture ties to an objective. If you cannot take an objective and describe it without looking it up, you don't know it. Because I'll tell them, you know where you live. I said, if Amicola is closed, can you figure out a way to get home? Or the major route that you normally go to get home. If you can figure out a way to get home, you know where you live. You gotta learn anatomy so you know where you live. So any way I ask it, you can answer it. And if you cannot do that, you don't know it, you just think you do. And then on the test, we both figured out you don't know it. The goal is to get you there before the test. So.
One thing I've heard, but have not tried, is like at the end of the exam, you have a question that's worth 2 points worth, but basically they have to write a little brief, couple sentences of how did you prepare for this exam. And then what the instructor does is they kind of aggregate, they sort the exams by grade, and then they create a little list of here's what the students who got A's said, here's what the students who got B's said, and then you literally read those, not associating names with marks,
Right.
but you read to the class, let me read you what some of the A students did to prepare. Let me read you what some of the F students did to prepare, and hopefully it becomes very self-evident. And if you want to become a B student and you're currently getting a C, maybe you should try some of these things that these B students did, which kind of is similar to kind of
Which it is, and I kind of make them do the reflection so that after they see their grade, because some of them will be like, I really thought I did really well, and then they bombed it because they had just superficial knowledge. So I make them, that's part of the reflection, and the really good students, you want to share what you did, and it's just, there's no one-stop shop that says if you do this, you get an A. You got to figure out what works for you, and I give them an example. I tried recording lectures. They're good if I want to go to sleep. I can't, that doesn't work for me. I cannot record and listen to somebody. It just puts me to sleep. But that works for some people. You know, I'm too lazy to make flashcards, but if there's flashcards there, I'll use them. I like to take my notes, and I'm a visual, I'm a color coder, so I have all of these colored highlights that I'm using, because that's what I'm doing. That works for me, but you gotta figure out what works for you. Here's some things different from what you did that you can try, because I'll tell them, the first test is just, have you figured out how to study for A&P? And if you don't like your score, you didn't figure out what you needed to do. You gotta change some things. And so I'll carve out like 10 minutes to talk about it, because I don't do exam review in class. There's too many students, it's too hard for us to keep up. We give them lots of office hours, except my night class. My night class, I will do that for them because I don't have any night office hours for them. But otherwise, they have to come. If I can get them in my office, then it's like, okay, what were you thinking about when you wrote that? Because if they don't put any marks on the test, I tell them, you're not gonna remember what you were thinking at the time you took this test. So why did you cross that out, or why did you pick that answer? And we kind of try to do some of that, and I do kind of talk about what the successful students are. And I've also even sent out, there's a guy, and I can't remember his name, Chen, he says, so you bombed the test, now what? I make him watch that, because you get to have a pity party, but then you gotta turn the page and do something about it. But he lets you have a little bit, I'm like, you get to have a pity party for 24 hours. You can be depressed. Now, you gotta, and we gotta knuckle down, you gotta do something. And that's when I'm really pushing to try to get them in, and I'm trying to stalk them on eLearn to see if they've been on. And if they're coming to class, you need to see me prior to the next test. I'll put in an alert. Like I said, it's about a third of the time it works. So I still was like, so I'm like, so what did it do overall? So Tracy Williams pulled this for me because I was teaching 3 classes, 3 lectures in the fall, and I taught 3 lectures in the spring. I was interim department head, so I didn't have a full load. And so my success rate was 37% of the total students that I had. And then it was 49% in the spring, and then the people repeating, but all I said was repeating. So I didn't say repeating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I didn't think at the time to ask that question. I just said, of the students repeating, it was 44%, and then it was 74% in the spring.
That's not necessarily repeating with you for that matter.
Correct. So it was just, so I just said repeating. Because I didn't ask technically the right questions. I didn't think about it that way. And then when I started looking at those 10 students and I saw, oh wow, one of them had already taken it 5 times before me. So it was like, and then that's when I thought, oh yeah, I guess I should have asked it that way. But she was nice enough to pull the data, so it was like, and so then I wanted to know, well, did I actually impact the underrepresented students? And it was like, if you look at the overall percent, no, and the overall percent for everyone was 25%. So I was like, But the 10 that I tracked in the fall, 8 Fs, 1 D, 1 W, in the spring, 1 A, 2 B, 6 Cs, 1 F. But then the students that I knew were underrepresented out of that 10, F to B, the W went to B, 3 Fs to C. So there were 5 of those 10 that I knew were underrepresented. So 4 were black, 1 was Hispanic. I knew them because I'd had them and I'd been working with them. But these were just the 10 that I happened to be tracking. So I know I made some progress. It doesn't look like it when you look at the overall percent, but I know that I made some progress. And that was kind of enough for me to keep motivated. So that was my My success rate pretty much stayed the same. While I had individual gains with particular students, I didn't overall. And that's what I would like to kind of go after and see what is it with those. The underrepresented overall was 25% in the fall of underrepresented. I don't know why it didn't have the impact overall. I saw it with those because I was tracking those because I knew them. And, I'd like to know what, what else we could go after, because now those are the students you really want to get in and say, okay, what is it that you're doing or not doing? Did you do the things, because some of them, I don't know everybody visually in terms of what their ethnicity is. So the ones that I tracked were ones that I knew. So I don't know the stories of the other students, and it'd be interesting to know what that is. Did they just not do it? They not buy into it? The thing is, the ones that went from F's to C's, and if they probably had 2 or 3 more assignments, because they ended up at 78, 79, and it hurt, but I can only give you the score you earned. If they'd had a few more assignments, they would have gone up probably into a B. They just we ran out of time and ran out of points. But they now realize, okay, I can do this. I actually can do it. And then on their own, some of them started to attend other lectures, additional labs. They were starting AMP2 in the summer because we had a tutor. So even though they were using the tutor for AMP2 stuff prior to AMP2 starting, they're taking it now. But they started this summer because, we have a tutor, they utilize the tutor. So they were doing additional stuff. They are making study groups, they're going to meet in the library. That spawned off of this, because now they realize this is what really good students do. They study all the time. so they study all the time. Bobby has students coming in because we got these big whiteboards up there. They want to be able to write on those whiteboards and erase and draw out because we provide markers. So that was the impact. So if you want to try it, so think about if you want to go, okay, I can't do anything right now, I want to do it in the spring, or think about the first week. What do you want your students to do? What are the 4 or 5 things that they need to do to be on track? For us, it's like get on Connect, read the chapter, those are the tasks. If there's a do this first, do this first. What are the things that they need to complete that first week? What is it, if they're on track to do well in your course, what are those things that they need to do? If you want to kind of try it now, pick an upcoming exam or an assignment that you have them do. And then what do they need to do if they're going to be a really good student for you? What is it that they need to do right now to prepare for the next test? So it could be you have them reflect on, okay, I did not prepare, and they got to be honest about it. And I tell them, I'm the only one reading it, but be honest about it. Because I'll share with them, okay, I'm honest, I'm a relatively lazy studier. So I try to figure out, but I know what works for me. I am not gonna record it because I'm not gonna listen to it. It'll put me to sleep. I don't like to make flashcards, but if they're there, I'll use them. I like to take my own notes and I like to color code. That's what works for me. I'm a visual, so I'm always trying to take it and turn it into something visually that I can remember. Or it's, some stupid mnemonic, the stupider the better. That's what sticks in my head. So they gotta do something. And then say, all right, you gotta give them a deadline and you gotta put some weight to it because they won't do it if it's optional. The really good students will do it if it's optional, but they're not the ones you're trying to grab. It's the ones that went on the first test that you're trying to see, all right, do you have it? You just don't know how, or do you not have it? So if you've got, if you've got something, and then it's like, just what would they need to do in that week? What is it that they need to do? So say you just came off of a test, and now you're preparing for the next test. All right, so they have, and I would put this on there, you have 24 hours to complain about your first test. This is a task, because then after that, we've turned the page. So now you can't, now you gotta do something. So you get to have a pity party for 24 hours once your score is posted and you've looked at it. 24 hours, you've got your pity party. Now, what are you gonna do differently? So you now have to come up with something. And it could be, they come talk to you and they say, here's what here's what I think I need to do. We have tutors, at least, in life sciences, we have tutors. Meet with the tutor. How did you, I've really then drilled down into, tell me in specific detail, how did you study for the first test? Cause I'll get, well, I read the book, and I keep coming back with, so how do you know what you understood in the book from what you didn't understand in the book? In A&P, we have our learning objectives embedded. And I literally will say, can you pick, so here's one, can you teach this to me right now and not look anything up, yes or no? If the answer is no, that's where you start. Here's your objectives, here's a blank piece of paper, try and explain this, where do you get stuck? Now you know what you don't know. Because when you come to me and say, I don't understand this, I'm gonna come back with, where are you lost? Teach it to me so I can see where you got lost. And then otherwise, we can't teach you everything. You have to have something, so I make them, they gotta meet me halfway. So they have to do this. So if that's something that you got, upcoming, that's what I make them do. I make them, if you wanted to try, just what's the next thing that they have to do?
So weekly, you do this weekly?
I do this
checklist
weekly. I do this weekly. So I did this in A&P 1. I did this in A&P 1. So I had something to go by, but I hadn't done it for A&P 2. This was me mad in the spring going, screw it, I'm gonna try something. So I didn't have a lot, so I was barely staying ahead of the class. So this fall, I'm barely staying ahead of them, because our platform changed in the way that I had them get to stuff in A&P 1 doesn't work anymore, so I go back through and I check to make sure that everything that I sent out still works. So I ended up having to make them a video of how to get to practice quizzes, because the way we did it in the fall doesn't work anymore. They changed their platform, so I made them a 3-minute video and I'm in there as a student view going, click this, click this, click this, click this, click this. And then those that couldn't get it to play, I literally said, log in to Connect, go to this, open SmartBook, answer one question, go to reports, be patient, it takes a while to load, go to practice quiz, select this. So I literally, it's, just 2 lines of script, and then somebody called me and they're like, I can't do it. So I'm like on the phone going, all right, here's your first question, because I know what that's gonna be. And I walked her through how to get to it. But I barely am staying ahead of them. Because it's hard when I'm writing it on the fly. And we were covering for an instructor, so the A&P 1, I didn't know where the different instructors were who were covering for another instructor, and I'm covering, and we're all at different spots. So I had to make it more generic. I couldn't put hard deadlines in there, because my classes were all either one day a week or Tuesday, Thursday. Here, we've got Monday, Wednesday, Wednesday night, Tuesday, Thursday, and they all have different deadlines. I would have, if I'm teaching that, I would have had the basic outline, but I would have had deadlines tailored to each course. Because those Monday, Wednesdays are gonna have different deadlines than a Wednesday only class. But that's the little wonkiness of it. Then once you make those 4 or 5 things that you think, then you just make it into a to-do list. That's why I literally will be like, 1, 24 hours to complain and have a pity party about my exam 1 score. 2, now I am literally, now read the whatever the upcoming chapter is for the next test. Read the chapter. For us, we have questions at the end of each chapter. I go through it and vet the questions. Any question that matches our learning objective, I assign. And they have to do it, no books, no notes. Again, honor system. The answers are in the back of the book. I want to know how many they got right. And if it's a true-false question that they have in the book, do you know why it's false? What would you do to make it true? And then for every chapter that they have, I go through and I vet those questions and I just make it measurable. So then for them now to put themselves in test mode, so I was given the purpose, so to put yourself in test mode, you're gonna do at least 5 50-question practice quizzes over the chapters that are gonna be on the test, and you cannot do them on one day. So 1 a day over 5 days. You can do more than that, but on one at least 5. If there's a good video on the Connect platform, they have to watch it at least 4 times, and I'll write, this is not a typo, because I really want them to watch it 4 times, because once is not gonna get retention. So I make them do this. And then they've got we've got a practice atlas, so they have our models on there, but it's not customizable, so they have to sit there with their lab manual, and they have to practice it to every part that's in the lab manual, they can do 100% on that. And it's like, and I'm like, and I want you to do it. So I don't care how long it takes, I want you to do it. You have the whole week to get it done. So carve out the time as you see fit to get it done. So a term instructor is doing this, but since she's been out, I've actually been writing hers. So it's not as specific because they're all at different spots. And I'm doing this with lecture with the 5 sections that I've got. Their upcoming tests are all next week. And so I will track, because I've got some of the 10 that I had been tracking from the spring. Some went on and took it in the summer, but I've got some of those 10 in the fall, and I'll see how they do, because normally, if it took you 2 attempts to get out of AMP1, it's not uncommon that it takes you 2 attempts to get out of AMP2. But one of those 10 is in the night class and was like, you know, she's like, I'm just gonna confess to you, I'm gonna own it. I haven't been studying, so I looked at her and I'm like, okay, so now what are you gonna do? I'm like, why? So she's like, well, at my home is distracting. So I said, you're not gonna be studying at home, right? No, I'm gonna come in. So she's got another student, they're gonna meet over the weekend and start studying, because she's like, I'm just gonna tell you, I haven't been studying. So I'm like, okay, fine. Okay, now what are you gonna do? It's small progress, but it's still progress. If they, you know, end up with the D and the first time through, they were in the 30s and we end up in the 60s, that is a win. Because at least now we're at we can work with that. So even some that don't pass, but they've improved, I'm still counting that as a win, because they are closer to where they need to be. And that's the thing. I didn't think about this, but somebody was like, well, you could embed this as a checklist in eLearn. I didn't think about that. So I'm color coding mine, and if you know me, I'm OCD. So it's white, yellow, green, blue, pink, because that's the order that when you go and send it to the print shop, that's the order of the colors that come in. So that's how I can, so I'm just looking for white, yellow, green, blue, pink. That's what I'm doing. That first one I showed you, I was having them put the stuff on the back, and then I'm like, that was stupid on my part. So now it's on the front, and then it's a checkbox for your section, because now I've got 5 of them. And then after the first couple weeks, then I sent out a gentle reminder for anybody that I hadn't gotten anything from, to remind them this is not optional, because in the spring I had somebody go, I didn't know it wasn't optional. I said, I sent it to you by email. Did you not see people turning stuff in class? And every day I hold up an envelope saying, if you have anything to turn in, you can put it in this envelope. And I carry all 5 envelopes, even on a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday night only class, so that at any kind of given time, you can dump it in. And I said, I emailed you reminding you I didn't have any and that this was not optional. But I'm a UTC student, and you're taking my anatomy class. So I said, okay, so you took a hit on the first test, which is itty bitty, because it's not worth that much. I go, get the rest of them done. Got the rest of them done, was fine. But I was like, I told you, every single day, I have them laid out across the instructor desk. Put it in, find your class, because if they are making it up or sitting in another one twice, then find your section, stick it in that folder, that is fine. And then for me, I have to realize not every student taking my class is gonna pass, and I have to accept that. I don't want to accept it sometimes, but sometimes you have to accept the limitations. I do what I can. I can't pull up every student, but this, I look at myself, and Dr. Norton talked about the starfish. I was somebody's starfish. So I'm gonna help mine. So I was somebody's starfish. So that's what I do. That's how I do it. I may not be there yet, but I'm closer than I was yesterday. I at least see the needle moving in my class, and that was the whole thing. So it was, I would say, if this doesn't work, do whatever it is that you feel like in your class is gonna move the needle. I just got tired of waiting, so that's why I'm literally like confessions of a instructor who got mad. And that was the end, that's the end of it.
So, in the underrepresented, it includes like also Pell eligible and, don't we count,
Pell, yeah.
first generation in college or something like that?
Our
I mean, there are a lot
it's
of
broad.
different, it is
So,
a very
and so
broad
then,
category.
right, so then it would have to be, and to tease it apart by the ethnicity was gonna take her longer. This was a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
And see, and at that time too, I honestly didn't really know the right questions to ask.
Right.
So
And
then,
we, in a classroom, I don't know who's Pell eligible. you
No.
know, but Tracy can just
But
segregate
if
that.
you're, in that instance, if I remember correctly, what Evelyn was using was URM, which is underrepresented.
Minorities, right, okay, yeah, you're right.
So if you're looking at performance funding.
Or the at-risk,
Then
or-
the at-risk is
yeah.
gonna be those.
Yeah, you're right. So,
What you're doing reminds me a bit of, I used an app, it wasn't Couch to 5K, but that's a famous one, but it was something like that. It is an app to help you kind of go from nothing to running a 5K in 8 weeks. And
yeah,
the idea behind it is if somebody just told me, go train and you got 8 weeks to do this, all right, I've got college degrees and feel like I'm pretty confident, I wouldn't really know how to set little mini milestones to get there. So this app literally, do this today, do this tomorrow, do this the next, blah, 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 blah. And it's funny because you can slide from day to day and see what it's gonna ask you. And I remember when I first downloaded it, I kind of slid later up.
uh-huh.
It's like, today you're running for 28 minutes with no walking, and I'm like, there's no way. And the problem was, I'm looking there instead of, what do I do today? Today you gotta run for a minute, then walk for a minute, run for a minute, and walk for a minute. And it, it gives you badges along the way, and to be honest, that doesn't do a thing for me, but the idea of taking a big task and breaking it down into manageable chunks is really,
Mm-hmm.
where it's, don't worry about that, worry about, here's what I'm doing today. And I'm wondering if, the checklist in eLearn is one thing, but with today's students, it almost seems interesting if we had someone on campus that knew how to make apps.
Yeah.
Like a Couch to A
Yeah, we do.
to B.
Yes.
That would be good.
That would be good.
What it reminds me of is, and I'm not a faculty or teaching instructor, but I did sit through a couple of workshops on transparency in the curriculum, the transparency in the syllabi. And so, what I hear you saying from that perspective is, here's the objective for this week. And you're gonna do this, and at the end of that, then we're gonna do an assessment of everything you've done. And we chunk that out, now we're gonna do the next week the same way. And you need to be able to do this, and understand this at the end of that second week. And for each week, you're doing the same kind of work. So the student always knows what the expectation is.
And if I assign it, so I was saying it, but now on like the ones that I'm doing now, I'm like, this is for lab practice. And then this is for lecture, this is to put you in test mode. I'm more specific.
Why?
Well, that's the
About the why,
transparency.
I want them to understand what, there's a reason. And if I don't think something like the histology that we have on our platform, I didn't think was good, so the first week, they didn't have anything to do because I didn't like it. Cause I went in and looked at it and I'm like, they're not gonna get anything out of it, there's no gain. So don't do that, but then the next week, we were doing heart and blood vessels, lots of gain. And then there are videos that have someone going over the models that are on YouTube, and I'm like, here are ones I like, and you need to watch it 4 times. Turn off the sound, and then, it's like,
Very prescriptive.
I'm very,
Yeah.
because, and then people are coming back and saying, boy, that really helped. Because now I went in and I looked at that, because the blood vessel stickman and the nerve stickman, those are the things that freak the students out the most, because it's a lot of structures on there, and again, they're back to the overwhelm, but it's like, here, just do the plexus first, then do the nerves that come out of the cervical plexus, and you literally can chunk it down. And that's what I'm always trying to get them to do, because I'll get a student going, well, I studied 7 hours, in one day, and I'm like, and you learned 1 hour of stuff. Because I will equate it with, I have a water bottle, and I'm like, okay, here's a water bottle that holds like half a liter. What happens if I try to pour a gallon in it? It overflows. There's your brain, trying to study 7 hours at once. You didn't learn 7 hours of material. And then I'll give them an example. If you're sitting on the test and you're like, man, I know Dr. Mobley said something about that, and I can't think about it, I'm like, see, you don't know it. You just thought you did. Because if you knew it, and you knew where you lived, because I'll ask them when they come in, you know where you live? And then sometimes I'll get, Dr. Mobley, I'm lost. I don't know where I live. Going into the test, because that's the thing that says, I've studied, I know where I live, so that any question that I can ask. But I literally tell them, every question that you get asked ties back to the objectives. We embed the objectives on the PowerPoints. I even take the objectives, put it in a Word document, and send it to you, because you want it. You have no reason to go, because they're like, I don't want to print out the PowerPoints. Fine, print out that. That is your study guide. Every question ties to the learning objectives. If it's not on there, we don't ask it. But there's a lot of learning objectives, so realize I'm going to sample, and you hope you studied what I sampled. But they will study it, so that's what I make them do.
This is awesome. Okay, I'm coming in from the outside, but nonetheless, it's scalable. Because you're working with that other person and by your term instructor. And that can be for all this course, all the teachers can use the same thing. It's just the deadlines and just tweaking it accordingly. So, wow, could Achieving the Dream pay for a semester, a course all for you to then get one key person in history and all those top courses that you had up earlier? In all those, one person per course that would come and be trained by you, that then would be a lot of time to do what you're doing for this course, very similarly in everybody's course. Or in one, to try it in one, to show the difference. Because it will, it is the, I love the, is it because I don't know, I can't do it, or I don't know how? I was walking in 2 days ago to HSC, and someone said, she wasn't doing well in biology, and I could hear her say this, and it was an underrepresented person. And she said, but I just don't know if I really think it's my study technique. It's just the way I just don't know how to study this stuff. Well, of course, you know me, I walked back and talked to her. I sent her to the Student Support Center, but that's not gonna work much either. Nonetheless, I spent time with it. It is so common, we just lose so many people. So this is a real specific, doable thing that can be scaled out.
And if it could be, and I hadn't even thought about doing it as an embedded checklist in eLearn.
Yeah.
That's an easy way. I like the tangible of them turning it
Right.
in, and because I make them initial, and so it's somewhat of an honor system. So every time you initial means you completed the task. So, and then if it's not initial, because I go back and I'm like, I saw that you didn't initial this, I didn't get to that.
Yeah. And
But
I'm
they're,
like,
you know,
that
so
that's
they're honest.
paper first. Give me the
It's-
first month in paper, and now we move into check.
Yeah,
Because I've established
That's a good-
this
that's a good
personal
point.
connection
Yeah.
and eye-to-eye integrity on this. And I can hold it up and say, hey, who didn't put it in differently than abstract? So these are all doable things that everybody can do, so.
There
Well,
is some satisfaction in me giving you something that.
It's completed.
Yeah.
That's why I asked for
And acknowledge.
it paper, but then when I was talking about it, because the reason it came up, and I hadn't even thought about it, was because after the term instructor was out, then it was Bobby, myself, Miranda, and Karen covering the 4 lectures. And so we were, at the beginning, we were like, just hold on to them, and then I wrote the second week, then I wrote the third week, then I wrote the 4th week, and then Miranda was like, you know, we could make this an embedded checklist, and I was like,
You know,
I hadn't even, see, I didn't even think about it because I hadn't thought about it. I don't know if I wasn't that far ahead. But because I had just decided in the spring, literally, a couple days before classes started, what the heck, I'm gonna try something.
That's why you want
I
to.
didn't know it was gonna work.
My hesitation with putting it in eLearn is I don't, for my students, I'm just gonna go from the perspective of knowing what my students do. When I teach a class, I put a date in the course content, it's got the PowerPoint I went over, which of course I tell them all the time, this isn't my lecture, these are my bullet points, you know, but anyway, regardless, it's there. It has anything that we worked on in class, so if there was a collaborative assignment or something we did in class, it'll be on there. Homework, everything's in there that we went over. And I tell them, if you miss a class, go to eLearn. And I constantly have students coming in, Miss Gordon, what did we do in class? I missed my car this or whatever. What did we do in class? Did you check eLearn? Okay? I don't think they like to use eLearn. It's not as fancy as, you know, okay.
No, an app on the phone, like the training,
Yeah, I like
see, that would, if somebody could write me an
That would be great.
Yes,
That would
yes,
be great.
see, that
And you know, in that app, there's the coach
would be
voice.
cool.
I do like the coach voice that will come on while you're running and say, you got this, keep going, something like that. That's actually helpful, but you can record your own voice.
Because I will say that for them, you know, you got this, if you've done this, okay, you got this, if you've read the chapter, because I will send them out and I will say, okay, you need to read the chapter. So then the first day we're doing real material, I'm like, okay, how many people actually read the chapter like I told you to? All right, anybody who hasn't read the chapter, you who are already behind, now the first time you hear it is me saying it. So you're already behind the 8 ball. Now I said, now you already gotta making yourself work harder. And I tell them, it's not working hard, it's working smart.
Right.
You gotta work smart.
But I do like how you, even though we write out all these student learning objectives, we don't always go back to them. I'm just gonna be honest. You know, we say we try to have them embedded, but it's not, it's not like how you talked about this objective that's on your syllabus goes with what I'm doing in this class and reinforcing the why part. We don't always do a good job of saying, just do this, just do this, just do this homework. Just get that grade on this homework, just get this, but we don't tell them the why enough, I don't think.
Yeah,
You know.
it was to get the buy-in
Right.
because I had to sell it, at the beginning. And so then, but then after the first test, especially those people who went up 20, 30 points on that first test, I didn't have to sell it. And then they're the same students because I told AMP2, you know, hey, I'm gonna try this. I only had 3 classes and we have like 1,000 students. So I said, if there's anybody who had me for AMP1 that wants to speak on this, feel free. And every class that I taught, I had at least somebody, and they're like, you know, I love it because it makes me stay on task. You know, now I know what I gotta get done, and it keeps me focused. And it's like, I wasn't, you know, the only reason I signed up for you is because you said you were gonna do it.
You know, the other good thing is you modeled it. If I'm coming in from an under whatever high school that has not prepared me for college, I don't know what that looks like. And so you have modeled for me, oh, I take things in chunks. Oh, I have deadlines for myself. Oh, and you have modeled that for me. So eventually I can do that with another class without you there. But until I see it, if that's not happening, I don't get it anywhere because my family can't do it. My friends are all in the same boat. I'm just sinking here. But you've thrown me a buoy, you know, to say, hey, hold on, this is how it's done. And I love that.
And see, once they pass, now I'm like, so then now I've set the bar. So
Yeah.
now, can I get lower than that
Yeah.
score? Because now you know you can do it. What I don't tell them is the tests get harder, but they were still hitting the bar. They don't realize that, but I know that. But I'm like, okay, if you did this, that means you can continue to do this. And I'm gonna hold you to that standard.
I think another secondary benefit of this that I don't think was intended, but probably happens, is you get more questions if there is misunderstanding. because they're held to completing that. And if there's an item they can't complete,
They
instead of
come,
just
yes.
saying, you know, because if I
Yes.
ask, I have found out, if I ask students in my class, raise your hand if you have any problems. No, nobody wants to, I'm a problem, I've got a problem over here. Nobody wants to say that. So I say, hey, if you want me to take a look at what you're working on, you know, something more growth mindset, I guess, is what we're trying to get to. I get more questions that way. But this would encourage, you know, I've gotta complete this, I don't know how, I better ask, you know. It's
And
gonna
I-
ask a peer, or they ask you, or.
And I had put something on mine that the term instructor didn't understand, so it said highlight, but that's because on my sheet, I'll have every lecture, if you're Monday, Wednesday at 1, your final is Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. So it said highlight, and they're like, how do I highlight that on eLearn? And because it was a misunderstanding. But it was, you know, I didn't realize that she didn't understand what I meant by that. And that threw everybody else off because they're like, because Miranda was like, I didn't know Connect could do that. It doesn't do that. I go, this is what it meant. It's just, in mine, I give them, because I've got a Monday, Wednesday, 8 to 9:20. Well, the final is Wednesday, still starting at 8. I had some odd times, so I want them to know on the front end when their final is, because that's my pet peeve. I don't like answering at the end. I get all these texts, phone calls, emails. When is my final? I already told you. I'm not gonna keep telling you. And then I'm like, and then on the sheet it says, keep this sheet.
Well, put it in your phone. I
And
mean,
that's what,
they
that's
walk
what
around.
it
Yes.
is.
Put it
Put it in your phone. Put it in your phone.
Put it in your phone and send it to me.
That's great.
See, I use a text-free app, so that's the number that I give out to the students, and they can text me on it. It comes in with a different ringtone. I'm like, if it's something short answer that I can answer, go ahead and text me, because I'm not always on eLearn, I'm not always, at a computer, but I pretty much 90% of the time will have my phone. And I can do a short yes, no, go to Connect to find something. So that's one of the things that I've incorporated, and I got that from Karen. So I give them that number, and they can text me with that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
So that way I know they don't have my
it's
personal.
really
cell
good,
phone.
it's really good.
No, that's okay. That's all I got.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Evelyn,
I didn't
that
mean to
was
stop
really
it.
good.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but yeah, Evelyn, I like what I was thinking actually the same thing. That's what we were just talking about, having her do something where we could sort of spread this out, try to figure it out, get it more, you have it pretty well defined, but having a group of people.
See, I don't
that you
know, and
work with-
yeah, so this is defined for AMP. So you'd have to, and see, like, I don't know what, for your courses, like, what does that look like for you?
That's
Right,
why you have
everybody
to
has
get
to
the
do that.
person in the department.
Right,
One-
yes. Just one person, it could be a
One
few
person
people,
to-
we'll try to see, I know this semester is pretty full for you, but yeah, maybe we could try something for the spring.
I like it, and I've found out, I like that it's very regimented, because I found out the more options you give the students, the less.
Students, I mean, freshmen
They
don't do
can't
option.
make a
That's-
They
that's-
can't
that's
make
the
a
whole thing.
decision, they cannot.
Yeah,
So I don't give them options.
You're like, do
You know what,
ABC.
that's a really good idea,
And
but-
see,
but
we
you
get a
could
lot of
give them- but you could
freshmen-
give them options after they've done all of this. If
So-
you need more.
So, and so
Yeah,
then,
that's true.
I
I give them a
willing,
lot of options.
like
and
my
that's
A
not fair.
students, I
Mhm.
don't need this, okay, so I told them, if you earn an A on the test, then I will suspend, you'll be exempt from doing this. However, if you drop below an A, you're back to doing it. So I'm willing to entertain it, because some of the A students don't end up doing it, but they got A's anyway.
Correct. You may not have to.
They don't need to, it was
Right.
going after, and I honestly didn't know what it was going to do. It was just,
It's
I-
really good, Evelyn.
I just
I love
wanted
the way
to
you
I
do
like
that.
it, I
something.
wish more people would have been here, because I
But
thought
it's,
that was
but,
extremely
you know,
robust.
but
It's a
let's
process.
think about this, cause we really should.
I think it's a really great idea.
It's just, I'm
Especially-
teaching, 6 classes, Monday through Thursday.
I know you can't do it this time, but we can try to get it going for next semester. So that you start off, we'll look and see if we can advertise some stuff like in November or something like that, to
Yeah.
start thinking about it and start getting so you can actually develop a faculty learning community.
There you go.
But I needed, but for me, yeah, I
It's
just
a really-
needed
but
to
it's a
see,
good- but it's a good-
I
it's a
needed
good
to
thing
see
because it
some
says
wins.
that-
That's my
Yeah, but
motivation.
it's like having a group of faculty that could take it back to their own
Discipline.
discipline. Yes, exactly, and that's a great way
Yeah,
to do it.
I can think of ways to build on what you
Right.
talked about for my specific courses.
Yes,
And a lot of my students are adult learners, and I have the issue where I have to rotate all of my courses through night eventually, or they're never gonna graduate, because there are some students that just cannot go to the class during the day. And so
and it's
I
not
have.
good for an online class.
Right,
basically.
exactly. So I have a little bit of a different situation, but I could very easily take what you've given me and cater it to those students. And
I really
and I was,
like-
that's what I was thinking through, I'm like, I could totally use that, I could use that.
Right, yeah, I mean, I just really, yeah, I think that's excellent though, I really do.
Thank you.
And then, I mean, for really to go from, what was the pass rate, it was like
We're at 36%.
to 49 overall?
That was mine.
I understand that, I'm just talking about your classes.
And so what was
I'm just
striking
saying,
for me were
that's-
the repeaters at 74%.
That was great.
That's huge.
Yeah, that was great.
That's huge,
That
that's
was a
huge,
big,
and
big
then
group.
they may not even had to repeat if they had done it the first semester.
Yeah, that's what
I
makes.
mean, if they
me
went
wonder.
up, that, it makes you think that if they had started off like that, and then trying to
Mhm.
figure out what other support systems that we need to have in place for those students, you know what I'm saying, outside of class.
See, what,
You know what I
so
mean?
the other thing that's been in a lot of A&P instructors' minds is very similar to the math center,
For sure.
but the equivalent of that, where we have TAs sitting in our lectures and taking notes in that lecture, and then having a supplemental one-on-one with students.
I mean, you know, at this point, the Math Center.
Because
I'm-
it's
I'm
coming
speaking-
down,
I'm
you know, with
speaking
the
out of
funding.
turn. I'm speaking out of turn, but I'm just like, suppose if you wanted to, maybe there's a little space in the Math Center that could be just that, your A&P corner or something? Just saying.
It was packed in there yesterday.
That's because it's test week.
Okay.
If it's test week, you probably can't do it.
And
For
see,
the-
well,
for
and then
math?
upstairs by the elevator, that's the tutor room, and we've got A&P models in there. And then I wrote the grant to get A&P models in the library, which is up
Yeah.
the library's, number of
But you could also
students.
reserve those
I
rooms
see
down there.
students in there with those.
Yeah.
Yes, I do
Yeah.
too, but you know.
That was why I
maybe
wanted
those
it, because we had no money in the
But you
department.
know that, right, right now, Andy Cross, you know Andy Cross,
Mhm.
in financial aid.
Yeah.
He, you know, right now, those students who are doing things, who are, we pay 100% for students who are on Pell, if they have work study. 100%, it used to be 80, and we gave money back, but so now we're at 100%
Wow.
for student workers through Pell.
Thank you.
Just saying. That does not come out of your budget at all.
Mhm.
If you have some students who are really good, and I'm sure you probably do.
And we've got them employed, some of them are already tutors. So the really good ones got in, and we can't get them back, because they're already in their programs. That's
But
why
that's
we
okay,
struggle.
but
Yeah.
you look for those students in your class, and you start asking them for the following semester. Like for spring semester, you look.
Yeah,
at
that's what
students-
we start
Yes.
looking after. Our first round of tests will be next week for the lectures,
Mhm.
and then we'll start to see who shakes out, and then I start looking at them as potential tutor material. No, we
But it's
do,
good.
I mean, we
But
do,
you
have
we
to.
do,
You
we have to.
Yeah.
You have
Because,
to.
I mean, it'll get so bad that we'll have a student tutoring who's currently in a class because we got nobody.
Yeah.
Because we're desperate, because the others are all in their programs, and then they pretty much, they don't wanna jeopardize that, and they don't wanna jeopardize it.
Well, we understand that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, but right
But
now.
that, yeah, so that's why I'm on AMP2, so I'll be looking at who does well on the first test,
Right.
and I'll be putting that thought in their head for the
Yeah, but I'm
spring.
just saying that, that's
But,
really great
yeah.
right now, so if you know of that, cause right now I'm trying to find some.
Okay.
I got a little institutional money for students, but to work, but I am, did you sign in? Did everybody sign in? Did you-
Oh,
you
I
sign
didn't
in?
sign
Okay.
It's not here.
Yeah.
Dr. Nancy. Of course, my crew over there.
Well,
Yeah,
how
we
you
did weekend.
They've already
doing
done everything going good, Crystal?
And so
Yeah,
they-
I
get
took
there
that
and,
first
you know, we
test
get
and
the
that
piece,
calc
they've already-
two, I was so nervous.
But
I
I missed it.
I didn't feel very confident, because sometimes, on the Pearson lab site, it'll accept one thing as an answer, and then you'll see it maybe in a review later, and it'll expect a different
Okay.
format, or something will be different.
Yeah, as long as you showed your work, which I know you did.
Yeah, I
But
absolutely
generally, they do it in a couple different ways.
Yeah.
So they, sometimes on that, they will accept the answer if it includes all the different elements at times.
But maybe not simplified.
Correct.
Yeah.
Unless it said simplified in the
Yeah,
answer
exactly.
or whatever else it may say in the answer, and sometimes they don't like square roots in the denominator, which I don't have a problem with.
Yeah.
Say, why? It doesn't make a daggum difference, you
It's
know,
the
just
same
keep it
thing.
approximated,
Cited.
to figure out what you're doing, you know what I'm saying, but
What
anyway,
is
but that's like a different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of
So how did it
think
go, though? 'Cause you still had show work problems, I know.
Yeah, there are 4 show work, but, I mean, I got the answers all right.
Mhm.
So, and, you know, there were a couple trick questions, I was kinda, I'm like, I am glad that I went through this a couple of times.
So really, it would be so cool having you as an instructor.
more intense.
And then that last piece is that the reason why I wanted to talk to you was, so you have that first exam.
For the odd one, I really think.
Or in a final.
And the final.
His notes that
Yeah,
he sent to
Oh,
us,
you think you're ready?
like,
Okay,
he
exam's
emailed
coming,
them
that
on
first test
e-learn,
coming.
like his
Right,
questions.
right, right. Here's it. I'm gonna get
Those were very
the
helpful.
Oh, good.
And well,
Sometimes the
I
book
wrote down
talks
some
at a
sample
different
test
level.
questions. They're not
And
test
it's
questions,
hard to
but
get
they're
that
hard
real
ones, and I
language
push
to get it.
I gotta get it out to the
So
rest of them, but I
those
pushed
are
it out to my
helpful.
one day a
The
week class.
example
And then
problems
I
where
gotta
it
send it
works
out
through the
to.
steps,
So you do
those
those
are very helpful.
So basically, no
Sometimes
notes,
the
and then
text
over the
can
weekend, I
help.
will send out the notes to key. I will never put them
It
together.
gives you
because I'm
background
not-
sometimes.
Yeah.
But, so that they can get a
So,
sense.
That accomplishes.
What
that.
I
And
thought,
more,
like,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
probably something
So that
Pearson
you
should
should,
teach.
you should,
But
you should be able,
in
and
the,
these
like, the
tie.
study
And
plan,
if you want, I
that would be
actually
nice
go,
is if you
here's the
had the
objective,
first
here's
couple
a question, here's an objective,
problems
here's a
of a
question
certain
on
type.
that objective.
If you had,
And then
if it
I'll
had
be
you
like,
just
here
do
are the
step by
objectives
step.
I'm picking,
Like,
and
what
these
is
are
this
questions that
first
tie to
step, what
those.
would you do first, you know, but
Oh.
then I don't know if people would use it because.
Well,
they
we've
would
done,
feel like
there are a
there's
few problems I know in Cal One that. are
They'll
like-
break it up.
But it's confusing because then you put the final answer in for the first
What
one
is,
instead of.
what would you use as you in this
Right.
example?
So I restarted it, and turned off the projector.
Okay.
But this is not the remote. This is the one that Tony Pfeiffer brought in. This goes with this because the one that's in here is missing that piece, and that's why it wouldn't work. So he got me one that worked because I was like, I need to move around.
I know you do.
So, so that's why, and I guess,
I don't know, what can I
Yeah.
do? It's probably gone.
and then they don't, unless you buy another one like that, it doesn't work.
And even that, so you have to buy another one that's just like that. one.
Yes,
If it's just like that one and it has the different, oh, okay. Yeah.
because so, we got a new computer over at HSC, but they didn't pull that out. So then I had this, but this was gone.
The interface, basically.
So and that was okay, cause we had dropped that one so much anyway, so Karen always has a backup one, so she gave me that one over there. But usually in the summer, we take it off because other people will use it, and then the summer before that, they took it, and then we had this,
But not the.
but not, so it's decorative at that point, but she buys the same kind, so it's not so bad, they're all the same kind, and she buys them at Staples.
Okay, well, that's a good one. I'm so glad you figured that one out. I was trying to figure out why it didn't work, you know?
Yeah, it's, as soon as I saw this, I knew it had a jump, and there's no jump to it.
So that is Tony's, right?
This is, yes,
Okay.
See, it fits in, so that's
Right.
his.
Right.
And so that one is missing that.
Oh my
So
gosh.
if
I'll
somebody
take this back.
accidentally took it,
Right, cause thinking it was
Thinking
there.
it was-
thinking
a
it was,
flash drive.
thinking it was a flash drive, and I know it happens.
Yeah, yeah.
It
So we
happens all
need
the
to put on
time.
there, leave here.
Yes,
This goes with them, this is microphone.
Property of care.
yeah.
They don't care about that either, but anyway,
That's
this
true.
is.
So that was why, that's
Stolen
why,
from
it
care.
wasn't, so it wasn't the batteries, it's just somebody took the flash.
I know, I tried to
And
change
it's
it
not-
backwards, but yeah,
It's not, this is an all-in-one, so there's no other place to plug it.
right.
When it wasn't an all-in-one, we would plug that in here,
Bottom.
so that
Nobody
people
would.
wouldn't take it. But I
So
couldn't
then we
get
have
it.
to put that little thing on there, so I'll take this back to Tony, but I'm so glad, thank you all for trying to get in touch with me. I was around there talking to Vivian, and it's so weird, cause the way I parked this morning, I was trying to tell you, I know you were starting, but it was like, I thought it was a parking space,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't, so when I got there, I couldn't even go back, cause it was a delivery truck coming in behind
Oh,
me.
so you were stuck.
And I was like, I gotta go find, so they had some more right there, so I pulled in, and then the delivery truck pulled in behind me, and I'm standing there waiting for him, and but you know what? I had had such a terrible morning. It's been like, I feel like I'm on the last week, the 13th, or whatever the heck it was, last Friday. Because I have this old lamp that's right by where I sit in the mornings, I knocked that over.
And broke it?
No, luckily.
Okay.
But it was just like all these weird things, so I'm not surprised that I left my car running this morning. It's just one of those days, you know? So I was like, I think I need to go home and hide under the covers or something.
I was that way last Friday when I found out we were still covering for 2 weeks. So I'm doing 6 lectures, 2 nights, 2 coming in 8 to 8:20, and then I'm doing her lecture on Wednesday night, so, and it's a different prep. Please see, that's my, right now, I can't do this.
She's out on the track. She
I cannot do this rest of the semester. But I could not hide behind, I'm like, let's protect. And then he decided after he accepted oral to not come back.
But it worked out really good for us. I don't know, where did she put it? Where did you
Cause I
put it?
heard that he said that it's gonna be recorded.
It's over in the corner by
Oh,
the file cabinet.
yeah,
It may still be running, which means we need to edit it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did it keep running?
Yeah, but I stopped it now. We can go and delete
Oh,
the
yeah, we
end.
need to